Hi, welcome to my video on review number 1 on Trig 2, and this review is on videos 1 to 27, and as in previous reviews it's marked as a quiz, so we marked this one out of 40. So let's start the review. Which one is the basic tan graph? And a tan graph, or tan, is sine over cosine. And so cosine is, if cosine theta is equal to 0, tan is undefined. And cosine is equal to 0 at 90, 270, negative 90, etc. So undefined, this is undefined at 180, nope. This is undefined at 180, nope. C is undefined at 90, and D is undefined at 90, vertical asymptote, division by 0 in your denominator right here. So which graph is this? So to tell, let's look at, if this is 180, this is 90, this is 0, let's look at the 45. The tan of 45 is positive, but the tan of 45 is negative, so it's not C. So D is the answer. So the tan of 45, if it's in the middle, is up here. So D is the correct answer. So if you have D, give yourself a mark. Now, let's graph y equals 2 tan 3 times theta plus 60. And we'll graph it in degrees. So to graph, the way I graph is that I use the mapping rule. So there's the basic one. And so the mapping rule here, this is a 3, so it's a 1/3 theta. Opposite is negative 60 degrees. And the y value stays the same, so it's a 2 times y. And there's no vertical translation up or down because it's no number on here, only a 0. So now this is the basic, so this is theta, this is tan theta, and this is 1/3 theta minus 60, and this is 2 theta. Now you memorize the tan. The tan is defined from negative 90, negative 45, 0, 45, 90, and these are in degrees. And at negative 90, tan is undefined because cos is 0, so it's, I'm going to use undefined. The tan of negative 45 is negative 1. The tan of 0 is 0. The tan of 45 is 1. The tan of 90 is undefined. So we take a negative 90 and sub it in here. We get 1/3 of negative 90 is negative 30, so that ends up to be negative 90. We put 70, we put 45 in here, negative 45, 1/3 is negative 15, plus negative 60 is negative 75. Put a 0 in here, 0 gives us negative 60. Notice that now it's negative 15, so without working this one out, I can say that's a negative 45, and this is a negative 30. And now let's work out the y values. If it's undefined at negative 90, it's undefined here, and it's undefined here. And this is negative 1, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2, 0, 2 times 0 is 0, 1, 2 times 1 is 2. So let's graph on this axis. So I have 30, but notice it's 15 between each one. And so the period of tan is 180, and 180 divided by 3 is 60. So notice from negative 90 to 30 is 60. And we divide it into 4 equal parts, so we get 15 each. So this starts off at negative 15. This is a negative 30. This is a negative 45, negative 60, negative 75, and a negative 90. So we have them all in. So it's undefined at negative 90, so vertical asymptote. It's undefined at negative 30, so it's the vertical asymptote. And at negative 75, we have a negative 2. So negative 2 is right here. And at 60, we have a 0. And at negative 45, we have a 2. So the tan graph comes down through here, loops. It's like this. And because it's a vertical asymptote, it'll go up. There's the vertical asymptote. So here's your graph. And if you did that, if you did this one, you get a mark here. If you did this table of values, you get a mark. This table of values, you get a mark. And if you drew this correctly, you get 2 marks, so 5 altogether. And this total of 6 for this page. Let's continue the review. Remember, the questions are done in order according to the videos. Which one below is the basic graph of cot, secant, and cosecant? Well, let's look at cot is cos over sine. Secant is 1 over cos. And cosecant is 1 over sine. So, sine, let's do sine or cos, doesn't make any difference. Sine is undefined when sine is equal to 0, so sine is undefined at 0, and just look down here. Let's look on the unit circle. We got 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. So sine is 0. Sine is y is 0 at 0, 180. So when we got sine in the denominator, we're looking at 0 and 180 when it's undefined. So it's undefined 0 and 180 here. It's undefined here. So that means that this one is cot, or this one is cosecant. So that means this is undefined at 90, which is cos. Cos is 0 at 90 and negative 90. So this must be the secant graph. It's undefined at, as you can see, at that's 180, so that's 90, negative 90, 270. And notice the secant graph is a reciprocal of cos. So if we drew the cos graph is going 1, 0. Cos graph goes like this. So there's the cos graph. You notice that 1 reciprocal, so this is a half right here. This is a 2. So this is the reciprocals above 1 and below negative 1. So this is the secant graph. And the cot graph is here, and the graph is 0. So the cot graph is like a tan graph, only it's going the opposite direction. So a tan graph comes down here and loops over like that. The cot graph goes reverse. So this is the cot graph. And what's left must be the cosecant graph. And the cosecant graph and the secant graph are loops above 1 and below negative 1. So this is 1 over sine. Sine is undefined at 0, 180, 360, negative 180, etc. So if you have the 3 of these correct, give yourself 3 marks. Which two below have a period of pi or 180? So tan got a period of 180, and cot got a period of 180. And sine, cos, secant, and cosecant all have periods of 360. So if you have each of these, give yourself 2 marks. So that's 5 for that page. Let's continue. Okay, it says graph the inverse of each. So y equals sine theta, so the inverse is theta is equal to, we can say, arc sine of the y value. So notice here, we have a degree, we come up with a number. In arc sine, we have a number, we come up with a degree, so it's the inverse, switch around. So the sine graph, again, let's look at the unit circle. and the unit circle is 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, and 0, negative 1. So sine is the y, so at 0, the y is 0. At 0, 0 is here, y is 0. At 90, y is 1. And at 180, y is 0. 270, y is negative 1. 360, y is 0. So this is the sine graph here, like this. And it just keeps on going. So you should be quite familiar with graphing these, sine and cos. And now we have to pick out which part of this is going to be, because if we draw a horizontal line test, it passes through more than one point. So we have to, so I'm picking out this piece here is where we do the inverse for. So that's, notice this is 90 and 1, 90 degrees and 1. And this one right here is negative 90 degrees and negative 1. So the inverse cos graph reverses. So this is theta, and this is the y. So it goes from, instead of going from 90 to 1, it goes from 1 to 90. So it's right here. So that's a 1, because it's reflected in the line y equals x. And this one right here is, in the inverse, we have, this is the negative 1 right here. So this is negative 1, giving you a negative 90. So it goes like this. Now I really don't draw it. What I do, I remember where the sign is restricted. So it's from negative 90 to 90. So if the number is positive, it got to be between 0 and 90. If the number is negative, which is right here, it got to be between 0 and negative 90. But there's his inverse. Now let's do the tan graph. The tan graph, tan is sine over cosine. So where's cos 0? Cos is 0 at the 90 and the 270, or 90 and the negative 90. So it's undefined at 90, undefined at 270, undefined at negative 90, undefined at negative 270. So the tan graph, just a quick sketch, is doing this. Here's another one. Notice the period of tan is 180, and there's many, many of them. I just drawn a few. So where do we restrict it? So we restricted, the tan is restricted between 90 and a negative 90. So we're going to look at this one. Again, it fails the horizontal line test, so we have to restrict it. So this is the area we're restricting it here. So this is 90, that's negative 90. So your domain becomes your range. So these vertical asymptotes become horizontal asymptotes. So this is a 90. This is negative 90. And so it's, now this is 45 is a 1. So 45 here is a 1. So it goes towards the horizontal asymptote. So it goes like this. There's a sketch of it. And that's the graph. Again, if you have this, you get a mark. If you do his inverse, you get a mark, 2 marks. If you draw a tan graph and do his inverse, you mark each, you get 2 marks. And notice that I put all these together, sine and tan. They're restricted. They're cut off from 90 to a negative 90. Notice cosecant is also 1 over sine. And sine, again, is undefined, like right here. So it's reciprocal. The sine graph is doing this. So very quickly, like this one right here. So there's the sine graph. Okay, and now it's restricted at, the sine can't be 0, so it can't be 0 at 90. Sine at 90 is, sine is at 90, 90 is here, sine is, I'm saying the sine is 0, and that's at 180. Oops, I got a 180 and 360. This shouldn't be here. So if I allow me, oops, sorry, didn't mean to cross my arm there. Just use a bit of whitener just so this won't get confusing. I'm going to take the 90 because at 90 is a 1. So this is wrong right here. So just take that away. Just pretend I didn't make that error, because sine is 0 at 0 degrees and 180 degrees. So there's the undefineds at 0, 180, 360, negative 180, negative 360. So now it's 0 here. So this is the inverse, and negative 1 restricted here. So it's the reciprocal of a half is 2, and here's the negative 1, so it goes down here. Remember, secant and cosecant are U-shapes in the graphs. There it is. There's the graph of cosecant. Now we want to do the restriction, so we have to cut this off. So we draw a horizontal line and pass through more than one point. So we have to cut it off here. Make this bigger. From 1 going to infinity. And right here, negative 1 going to negative infinity. So when we do the restriction, this is, again, let's go back to this one. Just make that clear. This is y, and this is theta. So this is cut off. That's a 90. So right here, that's a 90 and a 1. So this is a 1. Right here, that's a 1 and a 2. That's negative 1, negative 2. And so right here we have 90 and a negative 90. So at 1, so it's going from 1 to 2, so it's going like this. And right here, there's the negative 1 right there. Swing it in this way. So there's his inverse. So if you have this correct, and you have drawn this for his inverse, 2 marks of 6 in total. Again, I want to repeat, sine, cosecant, and tan are all, when you do the inverse, it's always from 90 to a negative 90. So if you did your calculator, and you did the inverse tan of negative 1, you get a negative 45. You get a negative 45 right here. And you did the inverse tan of 1, you get a 45. You only get one answer. So this is due to the restrictions. Okay, let's continue. For arc cos, arc secant, and arc cot, if the domain is positive, then the range is from, if it's positive, the range is from 0 to 90 degrees in between. So if the number is positive, then for each of these inverses, it's from 0 to 90. And if it's negative, it goes from 90 to 180. Remember, sine, cosecant, and cot go from negative 90 to a 90, but cos, secant, and cot go from 0 to 180. And again, positive, always positive from 0 to 180. on inverses, but for cos, secant, and cot, it was negative, it's from 90 to 180. If this was the other ones, then the other ones is sine, cosecant, and tan. It would be negative from 0 to negative 90. Okay, let's use those as we practice. What about, as a degree, the sine of tan to the negative 1 of a negative root 3? So this is an inverse. So if we have an inverse, let's see what the triangle is. We have a root 3, so tan is opposite over adjacent, so we have a root 3 over 1. So we have a root 3. Let's take this angle here. This is root 3. This is 1, and that's a 2. So this is a special right triangle. This is a 60. This is 30, and this is 90. So tan is opposite over adjacent root 3. So that means the reference angle is going to be 60 degrees. And tan is negative. Since tan is negative, that means tan is from negative 90, 0 to 90. So it's positive here and it's negative here. So since this is negative and negative is from negative 90, so that means that theta must be negative 60. So that means that we do the sine inverse tan of a negative root 3 is negative 60. Now, if we have a circle, and negative 60 is this rotation right here, terminal arm. So if that's a negative 60, this is 60, drop perpendicular. This is 30, so that's a 1, that's a root 3, and that's a 2. The tan of a negative 60, that's a 1, that's negative root 3. And the sine of negative 60 is sine is opposite over adjacent, and so it's a negative root 3 over sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite of sine is tan is opposite over adjacent, sine is opposite over hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse is 2. So the answer is negative root 3 over 2. So if you got a negative 60, give yourself a mark. If you got a negative root 3 over 2, give yourself 2 marks. Another one, find in radiant measure in terms of pi. So we have arc cos, the cot of 3 pi over 4. With 3 pi over 4, I like to work in degrees. So pi divided in 4 pieces, that means it's 45 degrees. That means I have a 135 degree angle. So if I have 135, let's draw a circle. 135 is right around here. Terminal arm. And that's 135. So we have, this is 45. That means the reference angle is 45. The triangle is a 45, 90. So this is 1, 1, root 2. In the second quadrant, the x is negative and the y is positive. So the arc cos of the cot is tan is opposite over adjacent, so the cos is adjacent over opposite. Adjacent is negative 1 over 1, so that's negative 1. And now we're doing arc cos. Arc cos is from, sine is from negative 90 to a 90, so arc cos is from 0 to 180. So the cos of what angle is negative 1? So on the unit circle, we have the unit circle. This is x is 1, y is 0, x is 0, y is 1, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. So cos is a negative 1 at 270. Cos Cos is the negative, cos is the x. That I was doing here, that's the y. Cos is negative 1 at 180. So arc cos of that is 180 degrees. At 0, it's 1. At 180, it's negative 1. We want it in terms of radians, so 180 is pi. So if you have a negative 1, give yourself a mark. If you have 180, change the radian, give yourself 2 marks altogether. 6 marks, total page, 6 marks. Let's continue. Again, just a review of all the videos we did from 1 to 27. Okay, let's continue. Now solve cot 3 theta minus 60 equals negative 1. We wanted to find the values from 0 to 360 in degrees. So we have a cot, so let's deal with the reciprocal. Let's deal with the tan. And the reciprocal of negative 1 is negative 1. Now we have, let's see, let's do the tan of what we call, the way I do it, I do the reference angle. When we do the reference angle, we have a 1. So the tan of a reference angle, that means the reference angle is 45 degrees. Now we go back to the unit circle, and we add sugar to coffee, and tan is negative, tan is positive in 1 and 3, so it's negative. So that's where it's negative. So we have it's positive here. So the right quadrants is quadrant 2 and 4. Quadrants 2 and 4. So let's draw them in 2, draw them in 4. We got a 45. So we rotate in quadrant 2. So we rotate right to here. We're rotating around, and we rotate to here. Reference angle is 45. So that means that this angle is 180 minus 45. So we have a 135 degree angle. So we have 135 degrees. And we have to go to 4th quadrant, rotate around. 4th quadrant, all the way around here. Get a reference angle of 45, which is here. Reference angle is between terminal arm and the x-axis. So this rotation is 360 minus 45. So that's 315. Now that we have all the 2 angles of 135 and 315, what I do, I go 3 theta minus 60 equals 135 plus the period of cot or tan is the same, so that's 360 n. And again, where n belongs to the integers. And also we have 3, same one again, but we have 315 and 360 n, where n belongs to the integers. And we solve this out. We divide by 3, so theta minus 60. 3 into 135 is 45. 3 into 160 is 103. And, the period, I almost got carried. Notice I have a 360 here, but the period of tan, jumped ahead of me, the period of tan is 180. Period of tan is 180. Period of cot is 180. So I almost jumped. So the other ones, sine, cos, secant, and cosecant is 360. So 3 into that makes 60. And so theta is equal to 60 plus 45 is 105 plus 60n. Now, n, if n is, let's put n as 0, put a 0 here, you get theta to be 105. We put 1 in, we get 165. Notice the degrees. 2 in, 120. So that's 2 times, that's 120. So it's a 225. And put 3 in. We put 3 in. Notice we're adding on 60 each time, so that's a 285. Put 4 in. 60 onto this is 315. Notice we could have another one here. Let's go back to -1. -1 here is 45. So notice we have all these angles. Now, what about if we have theta equals 300? Sorry, I've got to solve this one. So theta is right here. Theta minus 60 is, that's 135 when I divide by 3. That's 60 in. So theta is, that's 2, work that out. And we add on 60. That's, I'm dividing by 3, so that should have been, right? So that should have been a 2, 2, 5. Oh, no, I can't even add now. And divide by 3, that's a 60. And 60 add on to, that's, no, little metal here, not thinking correctly. So that's a 160. Just lost it for a second, but everything is okay now. Divide by 3, I get 105. There's my mistake. Divide by 3, I get 60. Bring the 60 over, I get 165 degrees and 60 in. So what happens if I do n and theta on this one? So if I put a 0 in, I get 165. If I put a 1 in, I get 225. Notice I get the same answers here. If I do -1, here I get 105. If I do a -2, I get 45. I do a 2, and I get 285. So I get all the same answers, 3. So the answers here are these. These are the factors that make this true. So again, that little tiny error here, the period of tan and cot is 180. And right here when I divide it, I didn't get the 105. So these are all the answers. So if you have these, if you have this one, this is 5 marks. So if you did the inverse, you get a mark. If you got these angles here, you get a mark. If you did this table right here, you get a mark. If you did this table correctly, picked out all the answers. So 5 marks in total if you ended up with these. Number 10, solve 3 cosecant 2 times theta plus pi over 2 minus 8 minus 2 for all values of theta. So we're finding for all values. So first of all, we got to solve this. So there's 3, 2, and -2 plus 8. That's a plus 8 there, so that makes that a 6. So we got cosecant 2 of theta plus pi over 2. 3 into 6 goes 2. And we got cosecant, so let's change it to sine of the same angle. And the sine reciprocal of cosecant is sine, the reciprocal of 2 is a half. And we have to go through this. Now we got to find the sine of the reference angle is a half. So the sine of the reference angle is a half. So if we have a triangle is a half, right triangle, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So if we take this angle here, opposite is 1, hypotenuse is 2, that's a root 3. So that means that's a 30, that's a 60. So the reference angle is 30 degrees. So let's go and find, we're going to add sugar to coffee, and sine is positive, so sine is positive in 1 and 2. Sine is negative in 3 and 4. Sine is the y is positive in 1 and 2. So that means, let's draw, so we have quadrant 1, we have a 30-degree reference angle. Quadrant 2, we have a 30-degree reference angle. So this angle right here, so it's 30 in the first quadrant, and right here, it's 180 minus 30, so it's a 150. So that means that this angle, 2 theta plus pi over 2 equals, I'm going to write down, equals, that angle is 30 degrees. And we have 2 theta plus pi over 2 is equal to 150. Now to notice, I have radians here, so I can change this to radians. So because they want radians, if I wanted degrees, I would change that to a 90. But because they want radians, so the best thing to do is 30 is pi divided by 6. I could work it out all in degrees, and so 30 times pi over 180, 30 and 180 go 6, and notice this is the reference angle 30, so there's 530, so that's 5 pi over 6. Now I have them in radians, and we also have the period of sine is 360 n, and where n belongs to the integers. But in radians, that's 2 pi n, and this one is 2 pi n. Divide by 2, theta plus pi over 2 equals, divide, you get a pi over 12, and you get a pi n, that's an n there. And here, pi over 2, divide by 2 gives you 5 pi over 12, pi n, and we get a pi over 12 minus pi over 2, and so that's pi over 12 minus 6 pi over 12, common denominator, and so that's a negative 5 pi over 12 plus pi n, and this one over here is 5 pi over 12 minus, and that becomes 5 pi over 12, and common denominator is 12, so 6 times each. And so that's negative pi over 12. Okay. Plus. So there's the two answers. And there's 6 marks. So notice I changed my degrees. I work in degrees, but I changed my degrees to radian because it said they want them in radians. So manipulated. I have my answers. So if you have this one, you get a mark. If you solved it out, to here, you get a mark. If you come up with the 2 angles, you get a mark each. If you work these out, that's, let's see, you did the reciprocal of, if you solved it, you got it out as far as here. So there's a mark here, a mark for that, and a mark for each of these angles, and a mark for having in terms of a radian. 6 marks altogether, 11 for that page. Sometimes you make a little error, but hopefully you will recover and correct yourself. Now, what about the angles of inclination? We have a line, so if we have a line, let's look at the angle of inclination. So x plus 2y equals 6. If we have a line, we're going to solve for y. Divide by 2. So y equals negative a half x plus 3. So the line has a y-intercept of 3. So this is x and this is y. Y-intercept of 3. We go down 1, right 2. Down 1, right 2. Down 1. This is the x-axis. Right 2. So there's the line cutting through there. Off the points. It's going to pass through these points now. So this is the x. So the angle of inclination is this angle right here. So let's use the calculator. So the angle of inclination is the slope. So the slope of the line is the negative 1/2. Tan is opposite over adjacent, which is the y over the x, which is the slope. So that means the tan of theta, which is the angle of inclination, is a negative 1/2. So that means theta equals tan to the negative 1/2. So when you use your calculator, this answer come out being negative 27 degrees. So let's see if I can find that. Oh, paper moved aside here. So negative 1/2. So let's turn on the calculator, clear it. So inverse tan of negative 0.5 is negative 26.56. So it's a negative 27. So this angle, the negative 27 degree angle, is this angle right here. So if this angle is the negative, make that a 27, that means this angle here is 27. So these are supplementary. So this angle here is 153. So the angle of inclination is 153 degrees. And just to check it, if you do the tan of 153, you get close to negative 1/2. Now, let's do the last one on this review. Find the measure of the obtuse angle, the nearest degree formed by the intersection of these. Notice we have y equals mx plus b. There are two lines. And y equals x minus 2. And y equals negative 2/5 x plus 3. So the slope of this line is a half. The slope of this line is negative 2/5. So that means, same as up here, that means the slope, the tan of theta is the slope, so you have a half. And the tan of theta is the slope, so you got a negative 2/5. So, I said the slope, careless of me, look, that's a 1. So the slope here is 1. I don't know where I got the half. Again, that's my brain working. So this is a 1. Sorry about that. What a mistake to make, but I make those mistakes every now and then. Just something happens to my brain. So the slope is 1, slope is 2/5. So theta is tan to the negative 1 on 1. So if you use your calculator, you get 45 degrees. So let's, see? No. So let's use my calculator. So inverse tan of, we said 1, make sure, 45 degrees. Okay, now inverse tan of negative 2/5 to the nearest degree. So negative 2/5. So clear that. Inverse tan of negative 2 division 5, which is negative 0.4. That will give us roughly to the nearest degree 22. Negative 22. So this is a negative 22. So the angle, now let's draw a picture of what's happening here. And the picture tells me, let's see, let's graph this. This is a negative 2. And the slope is 1, so it's up 1, right 1. So it's up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. So this angle of inclination right here is the angle between the x-axis and the line on the positive rotation. So there's the angle of inclination for that line. Now let's graph this one. This is a 3. And so the slope is down 2, right 5. Down 2, right 5. 3, 4, 5. Down 2, right 5. And if I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it goes down 2, right 5, down 2, right 5, right here. So this line, if I can draw it, there it is. So this, because it's negative, the angle of inclination is a negative 22 degrees going this way. That means vertically opposite angles are equal. This angle is 22 degrees. So we want the angle formed by the intersection of the obtuse. So we have a triangle that's doing this. We have a 45. We have a 22. So they total 67. So the other angle here is 180 minus 67. So that's 113 degrees. So this angle right here is 113 degrees, which is the obtuse angle. And if we want to get this angle, it's 67. So the obtuse angle is 113 degrees, formed by the intersection of the two lines. And you found that intersection by finding the angle of inclination for each line and working. By drawing the figure, it's easy to see that that's 22 negative, this is 22 positive, because it's vertically opposite angles equal, and so 180 degrees in the triangle gives you this obtuse angle here. 113 degrees, 6 marks. And that brings us to the end of the video. And when you get, see what mark do you have on your video? Well, add up all your pages, put your mark over 40, divide 40 into this numerator, get a decimal, move a decimal 2 places to the right to get a percent. And you have how well you understand these videos from number 1 to 27. And thank you for viewing my video. Hope the video helped you. A review of the 1 to 27 videos on Trig 2. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.